Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. I never questioned the rhythm of my mundane life until that dreary Wednesday at the office when my colleagues gathered around my cubicle, their faces etched with concern and whispered gossip. "Hey, Mike, is everything okay at home?" Jen asked, her voice low and uneasy. I frowned, puzzled by her question. "Yeah, everything's fine. Why do you ask?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "It's just that, we've heard some rumors, and we thought you should know," Tom chimed in, his eyes darting around as if fearing the walls themselves might be listening. "Some folks have seen Emily at the old Linden Café quite often during the day, and, well, she's not alone." I scoffed. The idea of Emily, my wife, spending her days in cafes instead of her studio seemed far-fetched. "That's impossible, she's busy with her art projects," I countered, but the seed of doubt was already planted. Driven by a mix of curiosity and the unsettling churn of suspicion, I found myself steering my car towards Linden Café the very next day. Nestled between an antique shop and a florist, the café was a quaint, unassuming spot that Emily adored for its quiet charm. I pushed open the door, the bell chiming overhead, and my heart froze. There, in the cozy corner booth under the faded mural of Paris, sat Emily. Her laughter filled the space, clear and melodious. But it wasn't her usual solitary figure that caught my gaze, it was the man beside her, his hand casually resting on hers, my younger brother, Luke. Memories of our childhood flooded back, how Luke always had the upper hand, the better toys, the lion's share of our parents' affection. A bitter taste of old resentments mingled with the shock of betrayal. I watched, hidden behind a pillar, as Emily leaned in, her smile reserved for Luke in a way it had never been for me. After they left, I sat in the very seat they had occupied, my mind racing. This wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a deliberate, painful revelation. The brother who had overshadowed my entire life was now threatening the sanctity of my marriage. Fury built within me like a storm. I knew then what needed to be done. Emily had chosen to step outside our vows, and with Luke of all people. The decision was stark, clear, as if whispered by the vengeful spirits of all wronged spouses. In the days that followed, I orchestrated my plan with cold precision. I confronted Emily with the evidence, watched her face crumble into despair and denial. Without a shred of the mercy she hadn't afforded me, I demanded she leave our home. The locks were changed, her belongings packed and left unceremoniously at the doorstep. As she pleaded through the door, tears staining her voice, I felt nothing. The brother I once knew was now just a shadow, as was the wife I thought I loved. I severed ties completely, ensuring that neither of them could ever reach me again. The café had been the stage of their betrayal, and it became the catalyst for my merciless retribution. As I sat there alone, the taste of victory was as bitter as the black coffee swirling in my cup, and just as dark. The days that followed Emily's expulsion were saturated with a surreal calm that belied the storm that had swept through my life. Yet, the quiet was deceptive, a mere prelude to the reckoning that awaited. I spent my evenings in solitude, the silence of the house punctuated only by the occasional clink of ice in my glass and the distant hum of the city. It was during one of these reflective nights that my phone erupted with a series of urgent buzzes. Glancing at the screen, I saw Luke's name flash with a persistence that fueled my simmering anger. Reluctantly, I answered, my voice icy. "What do you want, Luke?" "Mike, we need to talk." "It's not what you think," he pleaded, his voice strained with desperation. "I saw you with my own eyes. What more is there to understand?" I snapped back, the image of them together burning behind my eyelids. "Please, just meet me. There's more to it, things you don't know about Emily and her." I cut him off, "Save it. I'm not interested in your excuses." But as the days rolled on, curiosity and a need for answers gnawed at me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Luke. We chose a public park, neutral ground bathed in the stark light of dusk. As I approached the designated spot, I saw him sitting on a bench, his figure slumped, the picture of misery. As I neared, his head lifted, and our eyes met, 1,000 unspoken words crackling in the air between us. "Mike, listen, I swear, I didn't know she was your wife when we first met," Luke began, his voice eager, each word tumbling over the next. I scoffed. "You expect me to believe that? Emily and I have been married for 8 years, Luke. 8 years. And you never noticed her in any of our family pictures, at any events?" "It was at a conference. We just connected. It wasn't until later that I realized who she was, and by then." "You just decided to keep going," I finished for him, disgust coloring my tone. "Yes, I was going to end it, Mike. I just didn't know how to do it without hurting you," he admitted, his gaze dropping to the ground. "Hurting me?" I laughed bitterly. "You've never cared about that before." An awkward silence fell, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, I said, "What do you want from me, Luke? Forgiveness? Absolution? You won't find it here. I just want my brother back. I made a mistake, a terrible one, but I'm still your brother," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I have no brother," I stated flatly, the finality in my voice mirroring the chill of the evening air. As I turned to leave, Luke grabbed my arm. "Please, Mike. There's still." I yanked my arm away, cutting him off. "This conversation is over." Walking away, I felt a cascade of emotions, but above all, a deep, unyielding resolve settled in. Luke and Emily had woven their deceit together, and while I had dealt with Emily, my reckoning with Luke was far from over. The game had changed, and I was now playing for keeps. As the sky darkened above me, matching the tumult in my heart, I knew this was only the beginning. The path of retribution was long, and I was prepared to walk it to the very end. The relentless rhythm of the city seemed to echo the restlessness in my heart as I mulled over the fallout with Luke. Each step felt heavier as I plotted my next move, the city's towering silhouettes casting long shadows over my thoughts. The desire for retribution wasn't just a whisper now, it roared like the wind through the concrete canyons of downtown. A plan began to crystallize, one that would ensure Luke felt the depth of the betrayal as keenly as I had. I knew where to start, the very foundation of his pride. Luke had always boasted about his new position at the architectural firm, a role he'd secured with a charming facade and smooth talking. It was time his professional life mirrored the turmoil of his personal one. I started by reaching out to a few old college friends who now held sway in the same circles as Luke. A casual drink, a few pointed questions, and the seeds of doubt were sown, hinting at unethical behavior and a questionable past. The rumors were subtle, but in our industry, even a whisper could be the gust that toppled a career. As the days passed, I could see the strain on Luke's face during our incidental encounters in the city, the dark circles under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. Yet, my heart hardened against any remnants of fraternal affection. He had chosen his path, and now he was walking it. One evening, as I was leaving the office late, I spotted him waiting outside, his figure rigid against the dimming light. I approached, my steps deliberate. "Mike, we need to talk," he said, his voice weary, lacking the usual confident timbre. "I think everything that needed to be said has been aired," I replied coldly, stopping a few feet away from him. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's affecting my career, my life." Luke's voice was tinged with desperation. "Someone's been spreading rumors, and I know it's you. Why are you doing this? Do you really need to ask? After everything, you expect me to just move on?" I scoffed, my gaze steady on his. "Mike, please, this isn't you. You're not vindictive. We can fix this, fix our family," he pleaded, his hands outstretched in a futile attempt to bridge the chasm between us. "Our family was broken the moment you decided to betray me," I snapped, the anger and hurt resurfacing with a vengeance. "You're only experiencing a fraction of the pain you caused me." Luke stepped closer, his expression one of confusion and hurt. "So what's your end game? You ruin my life completely. Push me out of my job. For what? Satisfaction. For justice," I said firmly, my voice echoing slightly off the nearby buildings. "You took something irreplaceable from me. Consider this the price." Turning on my heel, I left him standing there, a solitary figure dwarfed by the sprawling cityscape. Each step away was heavy with mixed emotions, satisfaction mingled with sorrow. The path of vengeance was lonely, and as the city lights blinked on one by one, they mirrored the cold isolation settling into my bones. The war between brothers was far from over, and the city, a silent witness to our unraveling, braced for the next act in this tragic family drama. The city was cloaked in a relentless downpour, mirroring the storm that raged within me as I pushed my plan to its final, devastating crescendo. The weeks had frayed into months, each day stretching longer than the last, each action against Luke more ruthless than the one before. Now, as the finale loomed, a grim satisfaction settled over me. Tonight would be the culmination of all my efforts, the point where all debts would be paid in full. Luke's reputation had crumbled, whispers of his so-called indiscretions turning into outright accusations. His professional life was in tatters, and I knew he was vulnerable, isolated, just as I intended him to be. But one piece remained: to confront Emily, to show her the true cost of her betrayal. I chose the gallery where she first began her art career, the symbolism not lost on me. It was here that she had dreamt of a future, one that she had ultimately risked for an affair. I arrived under the guise of a final meeting, perhaps a hint of reconciliation. Emily was already there, her figure silhouetted against the canvases of her latest exhibition, her posture tense with anticipation. "Michael, you came. Does this mean?" Her voice trailed off, hope flickering in her eyes. "It means we end this. Tonight," I stated flatly, my tone void of warmth as I stepped closer, my footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent gallery. "End this? I don't understand. Are we not even going to try?" Confusion laced her words, her hands clasping and unclasping nervously. "There's nothing left to salvage, Emily. You destroyed everything," I replied, the coldness in my voice sharper than the air outside. "But, I thought we could." "You thought wrong." Cutting her off, I produced a stack of photographs from my coat, the ones I'd taken of her and Luke at the café, a visual testament to her deception. Her face paled as she looked at them, her voice a whisper. "Michael, please. This is your legacy, Emily." "Betrayal, captured in perfect clarity," I hissed, scattering the photographs at her feet like fallen leaves. As she kneeled to gather them, a pitiful sob escaped her. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" "No, a choice. And now, you live with it." "Alone," I declared, turning to leave, the finality in my steps echoing through the gallery. But before I could exit, my phone rang, a call from the hospital. It was about Luke. Racing thoughts collided with a sudden, inexplicable fear as I answered, my heart sinking with each word from the doctor. Luke had been in an accident, critical condition, the outcome uncertain. The world seemed to tilt, reality skewing into a nightmare. I found myself at the hospital, staring through the glass at Luke, his form barely recognizable amidst the tangle of tubes and machines. The sight of him, so vulnerable, so broken, stirred something unexpected within me, regret. A nurse approached, her expression somber. "Are you family?" she asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with emotions I couldn't name. "You should know, he's been asking for you. He kept saying he needed to explain something important about Emily and him," she added, her words slicing through the fog of my anger. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Had my desire for revenge blinded me to the truth? Was there something I had missed, something Luke tried to explain that night at the park? As I entered Luke's room, the beeping of the machines filled the silence between us. He opened his eyes slowly, pain and recognition flickering in his gaze. Mike. I was trying to tell you. Emily, she was helping me with a project, nothing more. I lied because I didn't want you to think. His voice was a rasp, strained and fading. The truth, stark and cruel, washed over me. There had been no affair. Emily's meetings with Luke had been innocent, twisted by my own hurt and assumptions into something vile. Luke, my voice broke, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. But it was too late for apologies. Luke's monitor flatlined, the steady beep turning into a long, unwavering tone. The room filled with the rush of nurses and doctors, a blur of motion as they tried to save him. I backed away, my mind reeling. My quest for revenge had not only shattered the lives of those I loved but had irrevocably broken my own. The deception was mine, born of misinterpreted truths and the shadows of past resentments. Leaving the hospital, the rain had stopped, but the world seemed darker, emptier. I knew then that I would never see Emily again, nor would I ever forgive myself. My revenge had been cruel, treacherous, and utterly ruthless, and it had cost me everything.